All right, let's get started here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We're really excited to be bringing you insights from the YCharts Econ Summary Deck, Q2 2021. I'm Allison Rendelman. I'm team lead of the Customer Success Associates here at YCharts. And joining me today is Rusi Shah, my esteemed colleague and Director of Product Management here at YCharts. Hey, Rushi.
How's it going, Allison? Glad to be here.
Hey. Yeah, it's going pretty good. Glad to be here as well. So, for a little bit of housekeeping, let's start off with that. We will send out a recording to all watching. And if you have any questions that come up during the presentation, you can use the Q&A section on that Zoom webinar. And one of our colleagues, Alex, is going to be answering all the questions throughout the presentation. If we weren't able to get to anything during the presentation, we will follow up. Your support rep will probably follow up and provide you with the answers that you're looking for. In just a moment, we'll go over where to actually find the Econ deck, so stick around for that. And if you want a version of a white label version of the Econ Summary deck, reach out to the support team directly. You can do that through chat. You can reach out to your individual customer success manager or any way that you reach out to us. So, Rushi, can you tell us first how we can find the Econ Summary deck within YCharts?
Yeah, definitely. So if you go into your YCharts account, you'll notice that we have quite a few resources available to you under that support dropdown. So if you click on support topics there, we have different sections here. So we have a resources section, we have tools and features where you can learn more about the data and the tools that we have, and then also subscription management there at the bottom. But if you click on that resources section, you'll see we have a lot of different content available for you. So we have webinars, presentation materials, case studies, etc. We also have our blog here where you can find all of our blog posts. But if you go ahead and click on that presentation materials section, you'll see that we have all of our historical Econ summary decks here. So we release these quarterly, and you can see that we have the most latest one, which was the Q2 2021 summary deck here at the top.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, this resources tab and all of the presentation materials, the Econ summary decks, are available to all clients of YCharts, no matter your tier or subscription level.
Awesome.
Yeah, so thanks for that. You would just click right here to download it. I already have a version downloaded, so without further ado, I'll go ahead and open that up. All right, so a few of you who have been using this deck since we first released it might have noticed that it's gone through a bit of a facelift. So we've added some new formatting, some new colors. As we kind of reformat and upgrade most of the YCharts site in general, we are also doing the same with our presentation materials that are coming out. So along with the facelift, at least visually here, we've also reorganized the deck when it comes to the sections, so the broader categories here. So you'll notice we now have it in 4 sections, and we're going to go through each one of those today. We have market data as our first section, then we're going to talk about bonds and interest rates. We'll move on to macroeconomic data, and we'll finish with charts of the moment. So any charts that have become relevant to us or big topics of conversation. I'll note that this deck from us, you are totally able to edit and change around things as it comes to you. So it just comes in the form of a PowerPoint slide. And so you can change things around, you can add charts, you can really change it to make it yours. And like I said, we do have the white version of this deck available. So a white labeled version means we've blocked out some places where the YCharts logo is. So you can take it and really customize it as far as your firm's logos, colors, and everything from there. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with our first section where Rushi's going to talk to us about market data.
Yeah, thanks, Allison, and thanks for that overview. So the market data section is a great starting point for this, and this is where we're going to cover the stock market performance in general over the last quarter, as well as asset classes. So if you want to go to that first slide of the market data section, we just cover the key stock market index performance, and really interesting Q2 overall. And so you can see here at the top, we have the US markets, and you have the NASDAQ composite leading the way, growing about 9.68% as tech kind of revitalized itself in Q2. So that was pretty interesting in comparison to Q1. But overall, you're seeing positive numbers here. Down at the bottom, we have the global markets, and you can see how emerging, just overall world indices as well outperformed or actually just performed positively. So really interesting Q2, and it looks like we're continuing the trend upwards thus far this year.
Yeah, and if I could add, Rushi, just one more kind of housekeeping thing. If you're listening to our voiceover today, I mean, that's really valuable. But what's nice about this deck is we've also included notes below. So on each slide, we have a little bit of a description of what you're seeing there. And that's really helpful if you're not keeping diligent notes as you watch through us today. There are notes included on the deck. That is a great reference point outside of these charts and visuals there.
Awesome. So this next slide here is going to cover the US stock sector performance. So it breaks down those indices a little bit further into the three segments: cyclical sectors, defensive, and sensitive. And again, kind of following that same pattern, you're seeing tech, like I mentioned, up about 11.38%. But real estate was the leader. And we're going to talk a lot about what's going on with the housing market and what happened in Q2. But looks like they grew the most at almost 13% this quarter so far. So you're seeing a lot of green overall. Just, I guess the only negative sector was utilities.
Yeah, it is interesting that everything was positive except for that utilities and just barely in this last quarter.
Yeah, which is interesting. I think you're seeing a lot more of the risk on sectors perform well in Q2 versus some of the risk off or defensive ones sort of being on the lower end of the sector performance.
Yeah. Well, let's move right along to our next slide here, which is asset class performance in the trailing periods version.
Yeah, I love these asset class quilts, they say, and it's a great way to just kind of view from a visual perspective and get an understanding of how different asset classes are performing. This one in general is more so showing different periodic performances. So you could see the year to date all the way to the left, and then the time frames get longer and longer as you go to the right, all the way up to 10 years. And I love this because you could see on the right side, it's a lot of the same story there on the longer time frames. You're seeing U.S. growth at the top, the S&P 500 having a solid 10-year total return, and that's annualized. And then you're seeing some of the other asset classes towards the bottom, like U.S. Treasuries, which is more of a safe haven investment, and commodities. But then when you kind of shift your eyes back to the left, you're seeing some of those trends change. So you're seeing year to date commodities are actually all the way at the top, and you're seeing things like real estate leading the way versus some of the other asset classes that we've been used to seeing at the top. So kind of a cool story here in this trailing period section.
Yeah, pandemics make for really interesting asset class performance quilts, huh?
Definitely,
Um,
definitely.
And something I just want to point out, because we do get this question from time to time, you can see that chart on the right-hand side. All of these are indices that are available on YCharts, and they're just used to represent those different asset class performances. So it's all YCharts data, and that's your reference point. So when you wonder what are we using to represent commodities, you can see that chart is just on the right-hand side there. And follow along. So let me switch it over to our larger quilt, the asset class performance, this time quarter by quarter.
Yeah, so the last slide was telling you more of periodic performance and just time frames overall, whereas this one is just showing you over time how each quarter performed based on each asset class. So kind of a different view, but telling the same story. And this is great for that diversification conversation with your clients if you're an advisor, right? So you could see that it's not always one category or one asset class that's leading the way. It's always changing. The market and the economy is changing, and that's an important thing to know when you're investing and when you have your portfolio set up the way it is. So you can see in this one, it's really interesting in the last two quarters, U.S. growth and growth versus value. That whole story of value actually outperforming in Q1. You could see, it grew by 11.3%, whereas growth was basically flat. And then the story kind of changed again here in Q2, where growth was right back at the top and value was a bit lower. So we'll I guess have to see what happens in the second half of the year. Also, it's interesting how back in 2018, commodities led the way to start the year off. and that kind of shifted as the year closed out. We're seeing those same types of asset classes near the top here in 2021. So maybe that kind of tells you what's going to happen in the second half of the year as well.
Yeah, Rishi, I was gonna say it's a lot easier to spot trends and see the patterns when you have like a visual aid like the quilt and you have all these nice colors that can kind of help you see, truly what classes, what asset classes are up versus down and see what's been repeating. I'll say from a sports standpoint, we get a lot of questions on this asset class performance chart. It's really popular. I've seen this exact chart taken from this deck and used in other businesses' presentations and everything, which you are more than welcome to do. We really encourage it. But charts like these, when you're able to represent such key information, but in a really strong visual sense with the colors and you can see the patterns there, it's always a lot easier to, I guess, kind of get a hold on how the economy and markets are doing.
Yeah, it really helps when you're an advisor and you're kind of you're looking at this data quite often, but your clients might not be. So putting it in a nice, clean, colorful way, it helps tell the story.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of stories to tell, can you tell us a story of performance of our diversified portfolios?
Yeah, and this one again is telling that diversification story, right? So I think we all got a lesson back in 2020 about the importance of diversification and what that means for your portfolio, and where how much risk you're really able to take. And that's what this chart tells you. So we have three different model portfolios, which if you're not familiar with that tool on YCharts, it's great to set up your portfolios and also kind of have this risk versus reward conversation. So we have an aggressive, which is 80-20 stock bond mix. We have balance, which is 50-50, and conservative, which is 20-80. And then we have the market overall. So this chart is great because it tells you in the last year what the performance of these different risk profiles were overall, but also the drawdown. So yeah, it's great that the S&P 500 has grown by 40% in this time frame, but also it has the highest or the largest drawdown, which was around 9.5% back in September 2020. So really having this conversation with your clients and showing them the importance of being able to stomach that risk, and if they are, then they can perhaps take a little bit more risk on and hopefully get the returns on the other end. So just a chart here to tell that story. And again, you can use our model portfolios to create these different risk models in your account. We actually have them as templates, so you can just download them, create them, and use them and edit the holdings if you'd like as well.
Yeah, and Rushi, if I could just touch on this drawdown chart in particular, because I think, like you said, it tells a really interesting story just in regards to like the S&P compared to all of our different diversified portfolios. This chart, has been popular enough. This max drawdown chart, that we're actually now including it as a module, as a whole chart that you can include in those PDF reports that you create for model portfolios. So for our YCharts professionals who use the PDF reports, have a lot of model portfolios in their account, we actually have released already the drawdown chart, so it's available upon request. But be on the lookout soon. We're going to be creating a couple more PDF reports that are going to automatically live in your account that you can choose from that include that drawdown chart, because it goes a long way as far as telling a story and just explaining, the kind of loss risk concepts to your clients.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. All right. And then I believe the last chart of this section, US total
Yes.
market cap to GDP.
Awesome. So yeah, this chart is the famous Buffett indicator, or coined by Warren Buffett, I guess, in terms of really showing how valued or where the market is in terms of valuation. So you can see at the top, it's the US total market cap as a percentage of GDP. And the normal average, or the norm of the markets in general, tends to be around 100%, but it can vary. And right now it's at about 2x. So just an interesting viewpoint of if you're a big value person and you're looking at the markets right now, it might seem a little overvalued.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. I wonder what Buffett himself might have to say when it comes to the Buffett indicator and recent times. Are we really, posed for another big recession, or, what does it mean in the context after a global pandemic? But it's an interesting chart nonetheless.
Yeah, a great one for a value versus growth analysis as well. So
Yeah, definitely. All right, so we're moving on to the next section we have in this presentation. We're talking bonds and interest rates. So maybe not as always tantalizing as talking about, the latest companies movement or the markets in that sense, or maybe talking about the company's founders and who's going to space. But bond and the interest rates that they carry and activity of the Fed is still very important to you and your clients nonetheless. With that being said, we do have just one chart or one slide for this section in particular, and that's our interest rate summary. So on the left-hand side here, you're just seeing a summary of interest rates, over the past couple quarters and then year ends. You're seeing on the right-hand side is our yield curve. So we get asked about this every time. The yield curve, this chart that you're seeing there, is available as an Excel template. So if you go to the Excel library and you have access to the YCharts add-in, you can download that yield curve template and follow along right as we're talking today. You can even get an updated yield curve template because it's just all you have to do is download it, refresh the information, and you're going to see the most current yield curve, which is a really great tool just to have in your back pocket because people always ask about it. Now, when it comes to interpreting the yield curve, this green line is the latest curve as of the making of this deck. And then the yellow line right above it is actually compared to a period 3 months ago. The blue line is just the period from now to last year. What's interesting is we had a steepening of the yield curve, as things started to normalize, sentiment improved, and we just saw rates kind of behaving as we might expect in a healthier or on its way to being healthier economy. That steepening of the yield curve then flattened a little bit in recent time. Some of this is due to information such as our CPI data in June. That came out a lot higher than analysts were expecting right off the bat. We talk about inflation. That's really been something that everyone has been keeping an eye on. It's kind of been it's been a while since we've had to worry about inflation. So mixed with some of that sentiment, I think that's why we're seeing a slight flattening of that yield curve in the green section, and it'll just be interesting to watch. So like I said, it's available as a template. If you wanted to download it, you could refresh that Excel template and see the yield curve as it stands today to get even the latest information there. But that's pretty much, what this slide is going to cover. And in terms of, this section of YCharts when we talk about the bond and interest rates. So
yeah,
go
yeah, I
ahead.
think it's definitely going to be really interesting for the second half of the year as people and headlines are more and more talking about what the Fed is thinking and doing. And so I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on the yield curve, and this is a great visual to talk through it.
Yeah, and right now it seems, a lot of the talk from the Fed is they're not worried about the inflation. They call it transitory, that we're just, in this transitioning period from what was a very closed economy to an opening economy. But, what I've learned from anything is part of the Fed's tools to, tamper inflation is that forward guidance they provide. So, they're always going to want to quell any rises to panic or anything. So it'll definitely be interesting. And I think inflation is going to be the word on everyone's lips. And the yield curve and the interest rates are just one part of telling that story.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So I'm going to hand it back to Rushi to talk about our macroeconomic data section on these slides.
Yeah, so thanks, Allison. This section is more not so much about market performance in general, but those leading indicators are major macroeconomic data points, which we have thousands of indicators on YCharts to cover that data, which is great while you're doing your market analysis. And this section kind of shows those visuals in action. So let's go right into it. This first slide here, which is the leading indicator data and trends slide. And this is great because it's just a heat map, and my eyes immediately go to certain red or green sections. And the first one I notice is just housing overall in this latest quarter. So you can see how housing, it's towards the bottom there. You'll see the housing starts and the building permits really have this very green section because of the growth in housing in general. And then also just business activity is the other green section. But some of the other cool trends here that you can see, that top line, the 10-2-year Treasury spread, you could see where it gets red back in 2018 and 2019 as we inverted the yield curve, and now we're back from that recessionary period. So kind of cool. Also, something else to point out here, you could see how 2019 to 2007 are all annually updated, whereas after 2019 we're showing you each quarter. So the latest 6 data points on this visual are more recent.
Yeah, and I love this visual. I mean, at least for the gradient standpoint, you see what a turn the housing sector has taken from, the story and everything we knew to 2008, 2009, to it really being one of the, stronger sectors that we're having that's driving the economy to today. And just how interesting things can change in 10 years from what drives one recession to another, basically.
Definitely. Yeah. So yeah, moving on to this next slide. So this one, it covers U.S. trade balance, and so in the top left, you're seeing the U.S. total exports versus imports, and you're seeing we've really fallen off in this last recessionary period, which you could see that line there at about negative 212 billion. And then in the top right, you'll see the chart that just kind of breaks out the exports versus imports in the U.S. Towards the bottom, we have this table here, which is great to just see from a region standpoint where imports and exports are headed. So China's the big one that kind of sticks out there. You can see year over year, the exports are up about 66.7%, whereas the imports are up 108%. So a lot more activity going on with China as of late. Might be leading from just a change in administration or just a difference in what's needed in the US economy as of late.
And Rishi, just for our understanding, these full values, these numbers here are for the last quarter. Is that correct for Q2?
That's correct. So all these data points are updated as of June 30th, the last quarter end.
Got it. So it's a quarter by quarter period comparison on that table below.
Exactly. Yep.
All right. Moving on to the next slide here. What can you tell us again about the housing market data?
Yeah, this is on all our minds as of late because of what's going on in housing and the strength of the market in general. This is a great slide if you want to have that conversation of where things are headed, and you're kind of seeing some of those trends change as of late. So you're seeing that 30-year mortgage rate hit that extreme low back in the beginning of 2021, and you saw a huge uptick in refinances and people just shopping for homes and wanting to have a better work from home office, I guess. And as of that, huge surge at the beginning of the year, we've kind of seen a shift. So that mortgage rate came off that low, and not that it's anything concerning as of now, but that mortgage originations number came off that huge surge as well. On the right, you're seeing the overall housing sentiment. So prospective buyers and just single family houses and those types of sentiment indicators are all kind of falling off that high that we saw, which is pretty interesting and probably something that we want to keep an eye on and as we progress throughout the year to see where housing goes.
Yeah, Rushi, this chart reminds me about an old inside joke. Some of my peers, and I don't know if you've heard the same, but anytime you pull up a chart and then you see that huge dip on the timeline, and it used to be in 2008, and the joke would just always be, "Oh, what happened then?" And it's funny because we've updated the joke for basically what has happened in 2020, where basically some of our charts, they started to look broken because we would see numbers, hugely outside of the standard deviation of the normal sentiment indicators of, imports, exports, those levels. And it was like our charts were broken again, but it's just, an updating for a new recessionary period and where we've seen some really crazy things in the market.
Yeah, I'm sure that's what happens when we just shut down the economy overnight. And that's funny. I'm sure there were a lot of people that reached out and asked about, hey, what's going on there? But this is where the numbers headed and went. So it's super interesting.
Yeah, I can definitely see at the very beginning there was those kind of questions till it just became the norm. for everyone. Expectations met, the reality.
For sure. Um, and then, yeah, this next chart here is the U.S. dollar strength. So again, another big talking point as we listen to the Fed and where inflation is headed, that it also impacts the dollar, right? So that top chart there, it covers the U.S. CPI in orange, and you can see it kind of take off as of late. It's having the opposite impact on the ICE U.S. dollar index. So you're seeing that kind of diverge in the other direction and sell off. And that tells an interesting story as to what's happening with exchange rates as well. So you're really seeing an uptick on the U.S. dollar strength versus other currencies, most notably in the Japanese yen in the bottom right there, but also in other against other currencies like the euro or the pound sterling or the Chinese yuan as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here, but overall inflation, you're starting to see the impact on what it's having on the US dollar.
Yeah, and Rushi, when it comes to like these exchange rate charts in particular, I like them. And you said it'll be interesting to see what happens. Something that I do just on my own account is I have on my dashboard a number of these exchange rates for the US dollar compared to the won, the yen, even the euro. And it's just nice because every time I log into YCharts, every time I hit my dashboard, I'm able to see, what's the current level of the dollar compared to those currencies. And that way, I just kind of keep abreast and I'm able to understand what's going on in the situation. So I really recommend this is a cool kind of indicator to keep on your dashboard so you can visit at any time at just one of those charts there.
Yeah, it's cool. You don't need to only have stocks and ETFs and funds and stuff on your dashboard. You can also have these indicators and keep an eye on those as well.
Yeah, and I can also know where my dollars are going to take me the furthest should I ever, get out there and travel again. So,
Hopefully soon.
yeah. All right. So this last section is covering all sections of charts of the moment. So what are trending topics that people have been talking about, people have been asking about? What have we seen has been popular from as far as like financial influencers and just making a number of charts that kind of fit the situation in general. So when it comes to like dividing up these sections in this econ summary deck, I definitely think this last section is the most opportunity for you to add a slide of your own, add a chart that deals with your business or something that you found interesting, because this is just charts of the moment, charts that moved us basically. So the first one here is what's been on everyone's lips in this year: inflation in 2021. What I like about this chart is it's an interesting comparison of something like the US inflation rate, which we have as a data point on YCharts, but the other two items that it's compared against, stacked up against, is the price of coffee and the price of retail gas. Just seeing how inflation's rising, the price of coffee is rising, gas is rising.
Yeah, I definitely, I haven't gone to Starbucks as much as of late, but I wonder if my coffee cup prices have gone up.
Yeah, it's interesting how much they might absorb from that and when eventually it gets passed on to us as a consumer. And I'll say, something like gas prices are so real because, everyone uses gas. Everyone's always looking at them. You can see when you drive by what the current level is. And I know even recently now I've been playing the game of, am I going to refill my tank in the city of Chicago, or am I going to try and drive out a couple of miles? Can I make it a couple miles outside of the city to really cash in on those few cents different when it comes to price per gallon? All right, so moving on, the next chart here happened to be about safe havens against US inflation. So we know inflation is the name of the game this year. And it's interesting what assets people kind of escape to try and combat the rising inflation of the US dollar as well in particular. What's interesting is, gold is kind of an interesting commodity here because it acts like a commodity. Sometimes it acts like a currency. Normally, in times of crisis, in times of panic, a lot of people flock to gold. And that was the case. We could see, definitely in 2020 and near the middle there, gold hit its high, but it actually hasn't surpassed that high since then. So even with inflation, the story on gold is really kind of interesting. However, we were talking about exchange rates earlier. We're still seeing stronger rates than, what we've seen in the past or before what's norm with the US and the euro. But the final thing here is that this is actually a pretty cool chart when it comes to the colors on this.
Yeah,
And Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm kind of biased from a product standpoint and would love to kind of show off how you could change your colors on your fundamental charts.
Definitely. So, for example, even the gold color to represent gold. Let me just switch over into our YCharts. And we can do this by going to our fundamental chart. And we'll just show you a few things of like advanced features when it comes to our charting that can really take, what starts as a basic chart with a basic story to the next step. So as we build anticipation, as the chart loads here, I've already added the indicators to the chart. So all you have to do if you want to recreate the chart on your end, just pull the labels or the exact names as they appear on the chart in your library, and then just use that bar on the left-hand side to pull that up. Awesome. So there it is. You can see, I have my indicators on the chart here, but it starts you off in your regular kind of YCharts colors there, your standard set. So something I do want to point out is our annotate feature here. If you just click on that, then you're able to actually annotate each security or each line on the chart as you see fit. So to annotate anything, all you have to do is click the little gear icon next to the actual security. And that's how I can change something like my gold indicator and change the color of the line to be a bit more goldish. You can also add a min and max line. You can add an average here. Really just other things to tell more of a story when it comes to making these charts. So Rushi, I know the product team is proud of that, and I think we'll continue to enhance and improve these fundamental charts because that's the name of the game. Same thing goes for the euro to US dollar. I can change the line here, change the color of the euro maybe to a blue, add my min, max, or average line. And if I wanted, the Canadian dollar to match like the Canadian flag, you can even create, the colors that pop down here are just kind of like preset ones, but you can even create a custom one by clicking on that custom box right there. And I'll just drag my cursor all the way over to the red. So those of you who are more artistically inclined can really get a lot of use out of this feature. And I think, it just goes to show you a way to enhance what is already a good story on a chart and just make it a lot more visually compelling and digestible for those that you might share it with.
Yeah, exactly. It's just another way to have a more visually appealing chart in your conversations with your clients if you're an advisor. So that's kind of the importance here.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let me jump back into the slides. I'm glad we got to walk through that example at least. And the next one we're going to talk about here are crypto assets. So the point of this slide is to show that crypto assets have kind of come back down to earth or have dropped from their highs that we saw a lot in the previous quarter. So Q1 of this year. Crypto assets have definitely just been big talking points in the news. And I actually want to shout out, we did a webinar maybe a couple months ago with Tyrone Ross, who just opened his own practice. And what his webinar was about is how, why, and what advisors need to be talking about with their clients when it comes to those crypto assets. So a really interesting point he made in that webinar was even if your clients aren't talking to you about crypto assets, it doesn't mean they're not talking about it. I think because they're not necessarily widely accepted or just very normalized in the investment advising space, clients can kind of be hesitant to bring them up. But that's why YCharts added them as data points to our platform. We know they have enough kind of momentum. People like talking about them, people like seeing them. So on this page, you can see that the Bitcoin market cap, it's definitely down from its highs at the end of the year. So a few people definitely were hurt by that. Those who are really invested. And Ethereum is right below that. I would say Bitcoin and Ethereum tend to be the two that are seen as more, I guess, stable when it comes to cryptocurrencies, if that's not too much of an oxymoron to use that word. But we do carry Dogecoin and even the Cardano crypto assets. So that's a lot of what this slide is about.
Yeah, and just want to reiterate, like, it's about that conversation that advisors are having, and they might not think of this as an important talking point, but if their end clients are thinking about it and they want to show it within a chart, it's probably important for us to have that data, which is exactly why we add data points like cryptocurrencies and so many other ones that you can find on the YCharts tool.
Yeah, we found that, if clients aren't going to their advisors to talk about it, they really are going through their own ways to invest in crypto assets, and it definitely could be a part of your conversation. And so that's why we made sure to include this when it comes to our econ summary deck. So I'll move on to our last chart on the slide here. Yes, we are ending with housing because that is the name of the game as far as sectors and ways to watch this year. I think we all realize, staring at the four walls, that where you live is very important. So just some indicators here. You're seeing U.S. existing home sales, how it's gone on. It's still above its average on, just a 20-year period. We've seen a little dip in recent times, but that's probably just, the market adjusting to the supply, meeting the demand. Same goes for the U.S. house price index that continues to rise, just like a lot of our prices in our lives continues to rise. And when we look at the existing home month supply, we definitely see, that kind of existing trend downwards. But as Rushi's been talking about earlier, we see strong building permits as indicators going up. That housing sector, from a supply standpoint, it looks like that's going to be really met. So, like I said, the four walls that surround us are always very important. It can be hard to plan right now for the future and, the next couple months. Are you planning travel trips? Is this Delta variant, really going to send us all back inside? But when it comes to housing, that's always going to be relevant for everyone's lives, because we all have to live and exist somewhere. So that's why we ended it on another housing indicator slide. All right. And that about wraps us up when it comes to the econ summary deck. Rishi, I had such a nice time presenting with you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Awesome. So for those of you who might have missed it at the beginning of the presentation, we will be sending a follow-up of a recording to all of those who attended, as well as anyone who registered for the event as well. If we weren't able to get to your question during the deck, Alex has been helping us out answering those questions. We'll certainly follow up. You'll probably hear from your support rep when it comes to that. And the econ deck, I want to make a point. The economic summary deck is probably one of our most popular presentation materials that we hand out to our clients. But if you like what's on this econ summary deck, and you kind of want more resources or would like to see some of the other offerings we have, I just want to give a quick shout out to two different features on YCharts that you might be interested to see. So let me just jump back into YCharts real quick and do a nice little plug. So the first plug I want to do is this market update Excel template we have. You can find that in our Excel library. If you have access to YCharts Professional, you have access to our Excel add-in. And on this templates page, I'll just hover over the little preview item there. You can see we have a market update. So we have a couple of things like those heat maps you're used to seeing, asset class summary, region summaries, all over, similar time periods. A lot of the charts yeah, the tables here are in theme to what we have on that econ deck. But what's nice about this is, instead of waiting for YCharts to come out and produce this deck, once a quarter, this is a template that lives within your computer and your desktop. So anytime you want a market update that you can take and put elsewhere, publish elsewhere, or make a PDF report of this, then you're able to open that template and you're able to refresh it. You're able to set your own timeline as far as the returns of this. And I've seen this template in particular gain a lot of traction amongst our users because it's just a little bit more dynamic as far as their direct control. And I even see users will copy and paste one of the tables here onto one of their own presentations or emails or forward that onto clients. So the market update is a really popular tool for YCharts professionals. But the second thing I want to point out when it comes to just passive market updates is one of our email reports. So let me click there. If you have ever subscribed to YCharts, you might already be familiar with this report, but it's called our YCharts Weekly Market Pulse. It comes out every Monday, and what it is just made up of a couple of modules of indicators centered around the economy, centered around upcoming economic events, and it's a really great way, just in your inbox while you're checking on all your emails and catching up from the weekend, you can just look at a quick market pulse summary from the past week. So if I hit on this preview, you'll see again, we've got conditional color formatting, read list of upcoming indicators and headlines that you should be on the watch out for. And it's a really good way to just kind of keep abreast of things, a much more passive experience because it's automatically emailed and released in your account. And there it is. That's what it looks like. You see the US indicators coming up, headline indicators to you that have happened. And what's nice about this, it comes to your inbox. So basically the report as you see it now exists within your inbox, and you're able to send that on to other people, even if they don't have access to YCharts. They're still able to read the indicator report. So that's really nice if you want to send it on to your clients or maybe peers in your office who don't have access to YCharts. Then that's a really great way just to keep other people in the loop as well. All right, we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Like I said, we'll be sending up a follow-up email with the recording for everyone who registered. And yeah, take care, everyone.